I heard my collarbone snap before I actually felt the pain, a sharp crack that sliced right through the chatter of 200 guests. The ballroom carpet was a deep shade of plush maroon. As my face slammed against it, the chemical scent of carpet cleaner filled my lungs. I lay there frozen, taking note of tiny details, the hem of a stranger's silk dress just inches away, the clatter of fallen wine glasses, a quiet gasping sound from someone nearby. Then a heavy, uncomfortable silence fell over the room as everyone collectively looked away. Up on the lit stage, my husband remained at the microphone. He smoothed over the chaos in that buttery, persuasive voice he used whenever things went wrong. He apologized for the interruption and resumed his speech as if nothing happened. Within seconds, the audience began to clap again. That applause haunted me for weeks. It all started 3 months earlier with something seemingly minor. It was the 10th anniversary gala for Montgomery Architecture, a massive $400,000 event that I had spent months organizing down to the smallest detail. I had written the program, approved the floral arrangements, and even flown out to handle a major client after my husband Caleb insulted them. That single trip saved the largest active contract on our firm's books. Yet, standing at the podium, Caleb announced our separation right in the middle of his speech. He framed it as a clean, mutual decision, casually thanking me for my years of support as if I were a departing vendor. When I walked toward the stage to demand the truth, Caleb gave a subtle nod to the security chief. The security guard grabbed my arm, causing me to lose my footing on the platform stairs. I tumbled downward, my shoulder taking the initial impact before my ribs slammed into the concrete step. Pain hit me in terrifying waves, making it impossible to draw a full breath. I lay motionless on the floor, refusing to cry in front of people who did not care. The only person who rushed to my side was Evelyn, our 60-year-old front desk receptionist. She knelt beside me on the velvet carpet, tears in her eyes, and called for an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor showed me the scans, pointing out a fractured collarbone and 3 cracked ribs. He warned me that I needed total rest and strictly advised against traveling. But while I sat in my hospital bed wearing a ruined gown, Caleb's corporate lawyer walked into the room. He handed me a 37-page divorce petition along with an offer of $1.5 million. Attached was a handwritten note from Caleb telling me to take the money and not make things difficult. I sat with that note in the dim light of the room. For 4 years, I had hidden my true identity. I had left my wealthy family behind in New York because I wanted to build something on my own. I moved to Chicago, married Caleb, and used my personal connections and family capital to transform his struggling firm into an industry powerhouse. Caleb genuinely believed he had built the empire by himself, and his insultingly low settlement offer proved it. I calmly folded the paper, reached into my bag, and pulled out a private phone I had not turned on in 4 years. I dialed a direct line to my family's office back home. When the family advisor answered, I told him to inform my father that I was coming back to New York and that I was completely finished with my marriage. The next morning, back in Chicago, Caleb was having breakfast with his young assistant when his world began to fall apart. His finance director called in a panic to report that our main financial backer had just pulled $120 million in funding. Caleb had no idea that the investment firm backing his largest projects was actually a quiet entity owned entirely by my family. Within hours, national financial news outlets picked up the story of the sudden funding withdrawal. Major clients began canceling their contracts, realizing the firm was on the brink of collapse. Caleb tried calling my personal phone 11 times in a row, but I ignored every single call. I was already on a private flight back home, looking out at the clouds and feeling a sense of freedom I had not felt in years. When I arrived at our corporate headquarters in Manhattan, my father met me in the main lobby. He looked at my sling, put a supportive hand on my shoulder, and welcomed me home. A few days later, Caleb flew to New York, desperate to figure out why his financial support had vanished. He managed to secure a meeting with the managing director of the investment group, completely unaware of who was running it. When he walked into the boardroom on the 42nd floor, I was sitting at the head of the table. Caleb stood in the doorway, completely stunned as he tried to process what was happening. He immediately started making excuses, claiming he made a mistake and blaming others for his choices. I cut him off instantly and explained the reality of his situation. I revealed that my family owned the capital group funding his firm and that I personally controlled every major asset he thought belonged to him. The color drained from his face as he realized his entire career had been built on my family's money. I handed him the legal documents showing that my presence behind the scenes was the only reason his company had ever succeeded. I reminded him that his low settlement offer represented a tiny fraction of what I had actually contributed. I made it clear that my legal team would handle the divorce and that his firm would be forced into bankruptcy within 2 months. Desperate and broken, he asked what I wanted from him, and I calmly replied that I already had everything I needed. Over the next few weeks, Caleb's firm completely collapsed under the weight of its debts. Every major client pulled out, and no other firm in the city would work with him. He was forced to close his business and eventually settled for a low-level consulting job just to pay his bills. He was not ruined in a dramatic way, but he was stripped of the status he had stolen from me. He was left with an ordinary life, realizing too late that he had thrown away the real force behind his success. Meanwhile, I used the recovered assets to launch a foundation dedicated to protecting women from economic exploitation in business. I also ensured that Evelyn, the receptionist who stayed by my side on the night of the gala, received a full pension so she could retire comfortably. My physical injuries healed after a few weeks, but the scans remained a constant reminder of the night I reclaimed my true identity. I stepped back into my rightful role in my family's business, stronger and more determined than ever. I did not just rebuild my life. I returned to who I was always meant to be.